Hello and welcome back to Bad Marriages in the Bible.
Welcome back, everybody.
I'm Kate.
I'm Sean.
And this is Dandelion Ministries, where we create space to encounter the grace of Jesus Christ in our place of need.
Yeah.
In this case...
Sounds like a great ministry.
In this case, we are looking at the bad marriages in the Bible, which they are telling on themselves, these people. They are the ones that have passed down their stories, their fights, their wrong turns, their freakouts from generation to generation until Moses wrote it all down in ancient Israel. So there is good news in here because they have a God who isn't repulsed by their mistakes, but rather loves them dearly and has forgiven and redeemed them. And that is one of the beautiful testimonies when you've been forgiven, that you're not ashamed of that wrong thing anymore. When God, who has the authority to,
kill you,
put you in hell.
Let's just be clear. He is God.
The most important one.
He has the prerogative to do what he wants.
When he says, I forgive you and I am with you and I love you, then that's a game changer. And it turns all those things that you were ashamed of and that you're trying to hide. And you start telling about, look what God did. Look what he did in my mess, in this case, bad marriage.
That's right. And as we've said very clearly before, I hope clearly anyway, clearly from my point of view.
I thought it was clear.
Thank you. That the Christianity and the Bible are not about us trying to be good people to please God to get into heaven and to not go to hell. That's not Christianity.
Nope.
Christianity is about a good God who has come to save broken people.
Amen.
The only prerequisite for you being a Christian is that you be a sinner first. Be somebody who is in over their heads and continues to do stupid things in the face of stress and can't figure out what the heck is going on. That's all there is required. And God says, great, this is my cup of tea. I love these types of people because that's all there are out there. That's all there are. So no matter how polished and wonderful you may think others are and you compare yourself to them, or you may think you're doing today. Maybe you look pretty good today. I hope you do.
Yeah.
But the reality is we all are dealing with a deep, deep need to be saved, to be loved, to be accepted, and to be forgiven. And that's the story of Christianity. And that's what these marriages show us. All these, and it's not just marriage. We're going to see parent-child relationships, which is we're about to get into some of those in the next couple episodes. And it's
colleague relationships. You might say that Isaac and Abimelech were colleagues.
Yes, you're going to hear about Isaac's interaction with his colleague somewhat. So, any intimate relationship you find yourself in, it's going to bring out our dysfunction. It's going to bring out good and bad things.
Yes.
And we're going to need God's help and redemption in the midst of that. So, as Kate just hinted, we are now moving on from Abraham and Sarah.
Yes.
To their son, Isaac.
Isaac, the promised child. He lives.
He lives. And Isaac has married Rebekah. Rebekah there's a whole story about that, which we're not going to get into. There's a kind of courtship, interesting back and forth that the Lord leads Isaac and his servant through and shows that Rebekah is this chosen one for him.
That's right. And you see, she was made just for me.
Just for me.
And he was made just for me.
Yeah, it's wonderful, romantic, and they happen to be cousins. So there we are.
Awesome.
Yeah, just
still legal in some countries.
That's right. It's just part of the deal. And they have, right before we catch up to them today,
which is in Genesis 26.
Thank you, Kate.
Yes.
That is right.
Verse, what is that number?
You ready?
6. 26:6.
Yeah, but we're actually going to start at verse 1 too, as well. But we catch up to them right after they've had their twins. They have Jacob and Esau, which are famous twins. You've probably heard of Jacob. The God of Jacob is something that the Bible refers to God as so often. And we're going to get into Jacob and Esau next time. And we're going to see some wonderful family dynamics there. But right after they have the twins, a famine hits the land. Stress. Right? Ta-da! And this is what happens in life. It's a bumper sticker that says poop happens, but with a stronger word. And we're trying to keep this G-rated. And but life happens, and it causes stress, and then our default patterns come out.
Especially when you are not getting your needs met. And you don't see a way forward. You're looking into the future and you're like, and my needs are not being met now. Right. And I don't think they will be.
Yeah. The future looks bleak. It's true. We totally get there all the time.
That sends all of us through the roof. Sends me through the roof.
Yes, it does. So there's a phrase that one of our trusted therapists has said to us. And because this whole episode, spoiler alert, is about getting outside help. Okay. You're going to need it. We all do. And it's actually just the epitome of sin that tells us you don't need any help. All right.
That's right.
So the plain fact is we need intervention. We need someone from outside to help us. And the
good news is every single person has had that, even if you can't afford a therapist, because the God of heaven has sent his only son, who is our primary outside help.
That's right. This is the heart of Christianity, as I said at the beginning. And so I have something else I want to say about that, but I wanted to read this line for you guys from a licensed counselor. So this isn't just some sort of half-baked thought.
She said it to me and I was like, ooh, that's good. I'm going to write it down.
And now we're sharing it with you. So this is like, it would cost you like $100 to get this normally. Totally free to you. Anyway, trauma makes you seek protection instead of connection. So the idea of trauma, stress, something happening in life that is overwhelming, that triggers you, that hurts, that exaggerates that need that Kate's talking about. It causes fear. It makes you seek protection instead of the thing that you actually need, which is connection. Our natural instinct is self-preservation. That is sin. This is what Adam and Eve dealt with, which we talked about in our first couple episodes. The enemy tells you you're in trouble. You need to take care of yourself. The first thing that happened after they've bit the fruit is they went and hid. They put fig leaves over themselves to protect themselves, to try to hide. And that is essentially what all of our self-protective methods amount to, is about a fig leaf. Okay. So just so you know, no matter what you're doing, even if it's, I'm going to go out and make millions of dollars to make myself feel better about myself. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. I'm going to take drugs. I'm going to isolate. However, it is about as good as a fig leaf in front of a hurricane. Okay. So just know that. But that's what we do. Trauma makes us instinctively, because of our sin, seek protection. Self-preservation. I'm going to circle the wagons. But what we really need is connection.
That's what we really need.
Intimacy. We need someone to come alongside us and say, I see it and I love you.
That's right. And flip it around and you'll see how impossible this is for us to do on our own. Trauma, in the face of trauma, seek connection instead of protection.
Yeah, right.
You in Ukraine who are running from bombs, this is impossible for us to do on our own. We need someone to first create that connection, that safe connection with us. And that is number one, Jesus Christ. But then he makes the others.
That's right. Amen. That's good. And so we are going to look at how Isaac handles stress and what he does with trauma. Okay. And it's going to sound very familiar. So in the face of this, what happens? We get this promise. There's this famine. There's this stress. And God speaks into that right away. And he says, and I love it, it tells us what Isaac was thinking, but we don't actually hear Isaac thinking it. We hear God address it. And he says, don't go to Egypt. It's the first thing God says, which I love, because that's always the answer. If you're reading through the Old Testament, the Israelites are always like, I got a great idea. this is stressing us out. There's problems. Let's go to Egypt. Which is why they end up in slavery for 400 years there. But anyway, God's like, don't go to Egypt, Isaac.
Yeah.
I'm going to take care of you. I know it's stressful. And he wants them to stay in this land called Gerar, which is part of the Promised Land, where the Philistines are ruling right now.
Yes. So
the same land. Go ahead.
He reiterates this promise saying, Isaac, I'm going to be faithful to you the way I was faithful to your father. And I am the same God. I don't change, and I am with you, and I am for you. And then he also gives him a promise. Those are all promises. But then he gives him something that's really impossible, which is the land. And for Abraham, the really impossible thing was a child because they were barren and they were old. But now the promised child lives, and God is saying impossible things, saying, I'm going to be faithful and I love you and I'm with you, but I'm also going to give you this land that is filled with Philistines, filled with enemies that are bigger and stronger than you are. And there's no way you're going to take possession of this land unless I do it.
That's right. So that's the impossible part. Yeah, very good for Isaac. And what he reiterates the promise to him and says, I'm going to take care of you. Everything's going to be okay, Isaac. That's what he says. Don't worry, essentially. And then Isaac goes and he's like, okay, I'm going to sojourn in the land. And the first thing he does is he repeats the pattern that his dad did with his mom. And that is, he looks at Rebekah and he's like, Rebekah's hot. So like he's done well, just like his dad did. Rebekah's smoking hot. And he's like, they're going to certainly kill me if they see that she's my wife. And so he does the same thing. And he says, you're going to be my sister. I'm going to call you my sister.
Yes.
So.
And she's like, okay.
Yeah, she's like, oh, I guess. And so that's what he starts doing. He says the same thing that his dad did. And it's actually with the same people just years later. Abimelech is the name of this king. And that is the same name that of the king that Abraham dealt with. And commentaries will tell you it's probably not the same guy, but it's definitely the same family. And so this is like the grandson of the former Abimelech, who also had to deal with this, who had the nightmare from God saying, I'm going to kill you for taking Sarah. And so this Abimelech is the one that Isaac is dealing with. And Isaac has told everybody that Rebekah's his sister. And Abimelech sees them. He's looking out the window one day and sees them hanging out outside in the garden or whatever, and they're laughing together and having a great time. And he's like, that's not his sister. That is obviously his wife. So they're probably doing a little more than laughing. But
which in one sense I love, because it shows that they were having a good time as a married couple years into their marriage. So
positives,
there's a mixed bag. It's always a mixed bag.
That's right. So this is a good thing. They're still enjoying each other, even though he's pretending that she is his sister.
Yes. And ultimately exploiting her, but
that's right. But they were enjoying it too. So, but Abimelech, we see the gravity of this, because at first it seems like, because Scripture is, especially the Old Testament, when Moses and others are recording some of this stuff, it is so understated. You're reading it, it's just like, and you just kind of pass right through the thing. Like, wait, what? He said she's his sister, and but there's no commentary on it until you see the reaction at times.
Yes. And
with Abimelech, we see him freak out. He's like, "What the heck?" And he calls Isaac in and confronts him. And Isaac confesses and says, "I was scared everybody was gonna kill me." And he's like, why have you done this? This is a horrible thing you've done, is what Abimelech says. And then Abimelech warns his whole people, the nation, saying, if anybody touches her, you're going to be put to death.
That's right.
So you just see how serious this was.
Because there is probably a memory of when God scared the bejeebers out of the former king of Abimelech.
It's a technical term, bejeebers.
Yes. Saying, I will kill all of you if you take Sarah, because he had a call on Sarah's life, and he didn't, and Abraham's life, and he was protecting them and saving them from their own sin and fear right there.
Right.
And so Abimelech, that had been passed down, that fear of Abraham's God. And so now with Isaac, you see that same fear of Abraham's God, which is pretty cool, I think.
It is cool. That is a healthy, like a good family system, family pattern
Yes.
that's being passed down. And that's really the point of our whole episode today, is to talk about family patterns. And because Isaac is repeating what his dad did.
Yes.
And it's something, so many of our patterns are learned ones. There's a mix,
Yes.
our way of dealing with life is a wonderful mix of nature and nurture. And your personality brings things to the table. And also, you're not raised in isolation. It's just none of us are an island, like Paul Simon said. We are all engaging with people from the day we're born. And so we are developing and learning ways of relating to the world by watching our family and by relating to them ourselves.
Some of the, maybe an easy way of describing it is differences and also destructive patterns, right? The beauty of different cultures and of everybody's different personality and everybody's different thumbprint and DNA are differences
Just
with each
differences,
other.
Yeah.
And those are the things that ultimately attract you to somebody in marriage too.
Right.
Ooh, this person's
she's
not
so unique.
like me.
That's right. That was our inner monologue that you heard when Kate and I saw each other. Ooh.
This person's fascinating.
Yeah, I certainly thought that. Still do, Kate, for the record.
Thank you. Likewise. And so the differences are the things that attract you at first. And, morning person, night person, that one might not be quite the thing you lead with.
I was a night person. I always say this. I was a night person, and I was not looking for a morning person per se. Didn't know that Kate was a morning person. I found out our first year of marriage.
I didn't know I was a morning person either, but I knew I was not particularly a night person.
Yeah. Anyway, now I say that I live in this weird no man's land where I kind of just feel tired. Anyway, just kidding.
So many factors about that, but my morningness doesn't help.
Yeah. Anyway, that's an example of a pattern that's not really destructive
It's just
at all.
a difference.
It's just a difference. But there are other things, where, maybe your family cooked spaghetti a certain way or whatever, there's just differences that happen, that you come from different groups and they have their own systems and their own ways of doing things.
Dog person, cat person.
Right. Which that never works. But so then you bring these two worlds together and there's always going to be tension. And
because of our destructive patterns.
Well, yeah, the differences themselves create tension. And so you kind of work through that and you have to figure out, how do we want to handle this? Your family always did it this way. My family did it this way. And we're creating a new family. So what is our pattern going to be?
That's right.
So that's like when you're just dealing with normal differences, which does cause stress. I mean, to be perfectly clear, that's not without stress. You still have to navigate those things and have conversations about stuff that you just used to do automatically. And now it's like, I have to think about this.
Right.
But that's part of life.
When we work with couples that are about to get married, that's one of the things we ask them to describe is what the roles were like in their family.
Yeah.
And what are things that they are really thankful for and that they admire and appreciate about the different roles that their mother and father and siblings played. And then also, what are the things that they want to say goodbye to? What are those things that brought them sadness and that are things they don't want with them in their marriage? And even just naming those things and getting them out, and you're not even aware of half of them, but having even that category and saying, okay, I'm going to bring with me things that I admire and I'm grateful for, but also those things that are going to bring ultimately sadness, to myself and to others. What are those things? And just having that category and being aware is a gift.
It is a gift. It does. It's because we can't anticipate all the things that life's going to throw at us. And we can't anticipate how we're going to handle those things then, right?
Yes.
So when surprises happen, we will find ourselves responding to them in certain ways. And sometimes it can be disconcerting.
Yes.
Sometimes it can be a little disturbing because we can't believe we handled it that way, or we can't believe that our spouse handled it that way.
Yeah.
And so it's helpful to just have some level of self-awareness on these things. But that's one of the things that's baked into life, that God uses circumstances
Yes.
and uses marriage and uses relating to others to grow us in self-awareness.
That's right. And that's right here in this passage, because Isaac was unaware of his pattern and of how dangerous it was for Rebekah and how destructive it ultimately was in their marriage. He was unaware of that. He was minimizing it perhaps, or denying it, or just unaware.
Sure.
And
he probably thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
He's like, I got a great idea.
This is a good
Egypt's out, but you can be my sister.
This is a good idea.
It's the old Abraham go-to.
That's awesome. But God intervened and sent Abimelech to have a sober view of what was really happening, of how this pattern was impacting Isaac and Rebekah, but also the whole Philistine tribe.
Right.
And so you see God being the advocate, his advocate right there. God being the one to see it and intervene at the right time and bring about a redemption.
Right. That's right. And that is our ultimate hope. I mean, we believe in a God that intervenes, as we said at the beginning. This is the testimony of Scripture. And it's true for all of us, no matter where you are in your relationship status right now, that God is at work in that, and that he's actually, if you're confronted with things that are surprising to you and that you don't know the way through, like Kate described earlier, that is a good thing. It sounds terrible, and you probably are like, I would rather feel anything else other than this.
Yes.
Yes.
Famine is no fun.
No fun. But as one of our professors used to say, a mentor of ours would say, that God is in the obstacle. Like God is in that thing, and he is actually putting his finger on whatever it is that is bothering you. He's pushing your buttons right now so that this thing can be brought out into the light, so that he can bring healing there, and so that you can see that you actually have an advocate for you there, and that there is actually maybe another way of dealing with the issue. Maybe there's a healthier way of going through the problem.
That's right.
And it's a humbling thing in relationship to have to face that.
Yes.
When you've come up against something and you're like dealing with it the way you always knew how, the way your family dealt with it, that you grew up with, and then your spouse is just like, what? They're looking at you like, what the heck makes you think that's a good way of dealing with this? It's a very humbling thing. The beautiful part is once you get through it, you can look back on it and laugh. But when you're going through it, it can often be just really uncomfortable.
Yes.
And but you can have that confidence that God is in that, and that he has given you this other person to bring these things out and to actually walk with you through them. That's one of the beautiful parts of marriage, is that you get to walk through these challenging moments, these overwhelming things, and it becomes part of your story in your relationship. And you actually grow together in this thing. It's one of the beautiful redemptive parts of marriage.
That's right.
And we've experienced it. We've been in over our heads a few times in our marriage.
It's never fun.
It's not.
But in the Lord, that's why we talked about this in the first few episodes, that marriage is a ministry of reconciliation.
Right.
And there was one time in our marriage that was particularly hard, and Sean was trying to sort out a big problem, and I was all about trying to sort out Sean's big problem too.
It started as work related, where things went kind of sideways in an organization I was a part of, but it never stays there, right? These external things bring out internal things, and so I was definitely lost.
Yeah,
and I just didn't quite know how to get through it.
And I was lost too, but I didn't realize it because I was so focused on Sean and trying to figure out his problem. And so my codependency had surfaced in our marriage. I had a lot of healing with my codependent relationships with my parents, before we had gotten married. And so I thought I was pretty good in that area, pretty healthy in that area. But here it was years into our marriage, and it's a mixed bag. We were very much in love and, laughing.
Laughing. Like Isaac and Rebekah.
That's right. But I had begun to form resentments with Sean, and I was frustrated at him for not being able to solve the problem and fix it the way I was suggesting. And that was so joyful for Sean. He loved that so much.
Yep.
And thank God, he brought us to some wise counselors, and they walked alongside us and helped me to own my part. And that's something in a marriage. It's never just one person.
That's right.
The addict, the drinker, or the,
Right. The person that has the overt, obvious problem is not the only problem.
Yes. It's two. It's everybody has. I have my part. You have your part. Yeah. And when we talk about family systems, especially thinking about a child in this case, that might be getting into addiction, with drugs or something, that child is carrying the pain of the family and acting it out. But it's showing that the whole family system is not well.
Right.
They're just carrying the pain and not handling it not hiding it well.
That's right.
Praise God.
And they're dealing with it in a way that is just more obviously self-destructive. But everybody in the system, like this is the thing about systems, which before I forget, I just want to say there are wonderful resources out there on this topic. And one of the really helpful and small books that one of our pastoral professors gave us was called Family Ties That Bind. So if you're interested in picking that up, Family Ties That Bind, it's really helpful that it just starts describing.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Painful book, but
yes,
worth it.
But it describes the systems that we live in and how we bring those systems with us into any other system we get into, which means work, new family, whatever it is. And so what Kate's describing is there might be somebody dealing with the family stress in a way that's really obviously bad, like they're a heroin addict. But the perfectionist in the family, the one that is shining and is the superstar and that is excelling, is doing the exact same thing.
They're just as sick.
They're just dealing with the problem with performance and being perfect. That's how they're going to solve the problem. And everybody in the family system, and this is true for every family. I want you to hear this. This is not judgmental about your family or, our two families. Every single family is coping with the reality of sin. Every single family is coping with the reality that we don't love the way that we should.
Or the other way of saying that is that they're suffering with sin.
Yes.
Nobody is not suffering with sin.
Exactly.
Double negative.
There you go. Nobody's not suffering. And so it's going to be our next t-shirt. Nobody's not suffering. Anyway. So the reality, I was saying something really meaningful and serious. Of course, I turned it into the joke. But that's the reality is that we just want to describe that for you so that there's Kate's not going to be able to pull it back together. That you just hear that every system out there is coping with this stress and this difficulty. And the fact of the matter is that God uses these moments in life to bring these things out. I mean, this is how he operates.
Yes.
He highlights the problem to heal it so that he might bring forgiveness and grace into that place.
That's right.
And that's what marriage, when you're coming together and you're bringing your other systems with you, so that's what that Family Ties That Bind helps you with, is that it gives you self-awareness when you go into meetings or you go in to deal with somebody, that you're bringing all your relational stuff with you. We've talked about that in previous episodes. That marriage is this wonderful, refining experience in relationship because it brings those things up because there's now two different systems that are interacting with one another. And you're working and often struggling to develop a new one. That there's a new thing that's growing and a new family. And as we said at the beginning, you're going to need help.
Yeah.
You're going to need help. You can't do it on your own. Your sin is going to keep telling you, you can deal it. You can fix this. You can figure it out. Just apply more, elbow grease, more willpower. But that never works. That is just brokenness. The reality is you're going to come up against a problem that you can't figure out at some point in life. And you're going to need outside help. You need, obviously, Jesus, ultimately, always. And yet he has also given us each other, humans, to work through problems. And that might be professional. It might be a counselor, a therapist. It probably will be a combination of counseling, pastoral care, friends, just solid friends that are going to stand with you through whatever the struggle is. But we need help.
Especially people who have a testimony of saying, I was in over my head, and this is how God helped me.
Right.
This is where I was weak, and look what Jesus did, and this is how I've come to know his grace. People who have testimonies of forgiveness are the safe people around you.
Amen.
They're probably not your mom and dad, in a marriage.
Right. They might be. You might have a really wonderful self-actualized parent that is going to be objective. But the reality is we're not objective with our kids. So, hey. Anyway, go ahead.
I mean, I would love that. And it's not to say they can't become that. But anyway, just to be aware of your family story. And are they people with the stories of forgiveness and redemption and who are able to be a safe place for you or not? And that's really, so maybe it is your mom and dad, but think about those categories first.
Think about those categories. And there's going to be a couple different categories in there, meaning you're going to, because there's two of you, you're going to need your own people. Kate has a group of support that backs her up, a group of women that she can trust and like that are her supports. And they love both of us, but they are her group. And I have a group of men, it's a similar thing that love both of us, but really are backing me up. And then, so you're going to need support on your own, because that's another thing you're going to find when you're in an intimate relationship is that you can't be everything for your spouse.
Yeah.
You're not going to be everything they need. Surprise.
Superwoman, Superman.
Hollywood tells you something else. You complete me, which we love Jerry Maguire. For the record, love that movie. But that phrase is such a wonderfully terrible codependent phrase. And in a sense, it's true.
Coldplay's "Fix You," which
I'll fix you, which we love that song too, but it's just not true. He's not going to be able to fix her. And sadly, he and Gwyneth did get divorced, which is just terrible. But anyhow, point being is you're going to need help. You're going to need support for you individually and as a couple. And when you're thinking about who supports you and who's a safe place for you, it's important, especially if it's on the couple level, that it's a safe place for your spouse too. And that's where I think, as Kate said, it may not be your parents. It may not be the in-laws. And it's okay if it is. But
it's wonderful.
It's
a gift.
It is a gift. It's something that you'll have to work out and find together. And so that's what we wanted to talk about with this passage, is just that these patterns are going to come up. It's okay. You don't need to be surprised. The differences, as Kate was saying at the beginning, some of them are just going to be wonderful, delightful things that are just differences that you sort through. Sometimes there's going to be destructive patterns, and they need to be addressed.
And this is why this is larger than just marriage itself, because God will use those triggers wherever they might be found.
Yes.
This might be in a work colleague. We joked around before that Isaac and Abimelech were work colleagues,
right?
Tribal chieftains. But this might be a parent-child relationship. This might be you relating to your parent. This might be an ex-husband or an ex-wife. This could be whatever.
Like a team member at work or a church, you're maybe at a Bible study and there's a person in your Bible study that drives you crazy.
Yes.
Just reminds you of somebody. You can't put your finger on it.
Yes.
Something like that.
Exactly. And these triggers, none of us want to feel them. We talked before the trigger of the famine where your needs aren't going to be met, and so Isaac resorted to an old family pattern. And so wherever that might be happening for you right now, you can see that the good news in that is that you're not crazy. Welcome to the human race. We all have those things. And there is a God who loves you dearly and is doing this in order to show that he is for you and he's going to bring about a redemption and he has good for you, perhaps to free you from a destructive pattern or to bring you into a greater level of who he's made you to be.
Right.
But his forgiveness is always there. His grace is always stronger. And Isaac and Rebekah show us that his redemption is bigger than any problem.
That's right. That's good news. And it's something, just on a practical note, if that is happening, you don't have to put pressure on yourself to try to figure that out and muscle it through right in the moment. That's one of the wonderful things about that Family Ties That Bind book.
Because that's always what I do. That's I'm like, I got to figure this out and muscle it through. Try harder doing the exact same thing.
It's a moment where if you're feeling triggered and you're watching yourself react in a certain way that is unhealthy or unhelpful, that kind of exacerbates the problem. You can take a step, take a moment, step back, find space where you can actually calm a bit and then start to ask some maybe questions, why do I react this way? Just have some curiosity about it. And like we said, find somebody who can help you process that a little bit and talk through it with you.
Who will be curious with you and not judgmental.
Not judgmental, because that's really important. God's bringing these things out so that you can actually look at them and walk through them and find healing in them. And it's important not to feel shame about the thing from the person you're walking through it with.
Yeah,
so.
Even if you're totally in the wrong.
Yes. Well, you're reacting for a reason, and that's okay. So it's kind of getting to know you, you're getting to know yourself a little bit better. And the Lord knows you better than anybody. And so if he's pushing on things, it's because he's actually going to bring something beautiful out of it and bring healing. So
he's the one that's saying, neither do I condemn you. I am not condemning you for this. I am freeing you from it.
That's good. We should stop there. That's perfect. So the Lord is your advocate and he is on your side. And so we just want to thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Just pat yourself on the back for getting through this episode with us. We're so glad you listened. Remember that whatever platform you're listening to this on, we'd love for you to subscribe to it and listen to the show. We share it with your friends, families, neighbors, your family system. It might stir up things that you didn't expect. Maybe this podcast can be your trigger. And but we would love for you to share with people. And if you're listening to us on Apple, we would love to get a review because that helps us in some way, shape, or form that we're not quite sure about. But we would love for you to review it. It at least lets us know that you're there. And
if it's a negative review, feel free to give us a private email.
And I will have in the show notes, which I've actually finally figured out how to do this. I've been saying that, but I didn't know how to do it right. And now we know. There will actually be links in the show notes. You can go to our website, Dandelion Ministries. You can also find a link to our email where you can send us questions because we're going to be answering questions in the second half of the show. We'll get back to that next week. And so whatever you need to find, it will be in the show notes. And just click on those
golden
things.
nuggets.
Yeah.
Filled with golden nuggets, those show notes.
So we would love to hear from you. All right.
Okay.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.